This presentation talks about the study of how Pongo pygmaeus, or their more commonly used name of orangutans, communicate with each other and the factors that collide. Orangutans are great apes and belong in the group Hominidae, which involves us humans as well. Orangutans are exclusively found in Southeast Asia in the islands of Sumatra and Borneo. Communication between orangutans is limited to visual reception, auditory response, sensory stimuli, and a combination of all three. This includes things such as facial expressions, body movements, gestural signals, and vocal communication. The research paper I'm presenting today is titled Gesture Use and Communication Between Mothers and Offspring in Wild Orangutans from the Sabangao Peat Swamp Forest, Borneo. Although its name implies infant orangutans, the research paper also includes offspring in their infant, adolescence, and adult stage. The research paper also includes vocal communication and a mix of both vocal and gestural language. The research itself was collected by an organization that is located in San Anselmo, California, and is named the Leakey Foundation Orangutans. The research itself took place in the forests of Borneo and has accumulated over 681 hours of footage at a distance no more than 20 meters from the subject. Before any noise or gesture is made, scientists that worked on this paper needed to deduct when orangutans are attempting to make an intentional line of communication. The researchers established that in order for an orangutan to make a line of communication, they must reach 3 levels of criteria. The first involves the body of the signaler to be moved in the direction of the recipient. The second is that the signaler must wait for a response from the recipient after performing their act of communication in order to enact some kind of connection. The third criteria states that if the signaler feels that the recipient's response was anything other than satisfactory, then they will begin to persist by changing their gestures, vocals, and body until they feel satisfied with a response from said recipient. Establishing a line of communication with more than one recipient is also possible, but has proven difficult for researchers to deduce all levels of criteria. To begin our topic, we have vocal communication, which involves various sounds such as kiss squeaks, grumps, cry/screams, frustration calls, and complex calls, which conclude from a mix of squeaks, grumps, and barks. Each auditory noise is directed at an individual and/or group if a line of communication was established beforehand. Research shows that each noise has an objective or goal behind it, and it falls upon the recipient to interpret the noise as best as they can. Although this may differ from noise to noise and from ape to ape, the success rate for all vocal communication is estimated to be around 80%. Infant orangutans are the ones that have yet to develop cognitive skills and responsive abilities to visual, auditory, or sensory stimuli. Numbers vary when trying to statistically categorize where infant orangutans fall, but begin to develop and learn all forms of communication on average within their first 2 years of life. The most famous form of communication of orangutans are kiss squeaks, which have multiple meanings alone. Kiss squeaks can have a variation of tone, pitch, and volume to them, which hold different meanings per variation. As of now, the research does not give a definitive answer on what kiss squeaks mean, since there are 5,000 variations of it, which can hold different meanings. An example we can compare this to is when we talk about a car. We can call it a variety of names such as a car, an automobile, a whip, wheels, a motor vehicle, etc. These words mean the same thing but have different names. Kiss squeaks are exactly the same. They can hold the same meaning as other kiss squeaks or can have entirely different meanings, which makes them hard to decipher. The grumps are made to show that the individual is disturbed or annoyed, similar to its frustration call, but invokes less fear. Although the kiss squeaks are one of the many mysteries about the origin of our language, there are other vocal signals that we can understand. Frustration calls, for example, are very simple to understand since they display visual frustration, which is an emotion that is universal within every species, including us. When orangutans cry or scream, this invokes many possible outcomes, such as physical pain, emotional pain, or assuring dominance. The varying outcomes is dictated by the age of the orangutan. For example, if an infant cries or screams, it is most likely due to them being detached from their mothers, and it is a fear-invoked cry or scream. If an adolescent cries or screams, the door opens to more possibilities, such as them feeling pain, losing a loved one, or an attempt to assure dominance. This set of example also aligns with an adult orangutan. Gestural communication involves things such as pointing, differing actions with an object, variations of grabbing, variations of pushing, and facial expressions such as a protruding lip. The first gesture is pointing, which creates a relationship between the signaler and the object that they are pointing at. Depending on who the recipient is, they will interpret it as either the signaler wants this object or sees something unusual about the object. When the signaler has this object, they can shake it, throw it, bite it, or just hold it, which realistically is driven by pure curiosity rather than a specific objective or goal. The same goes for variations of pushing, since these actions are mostly done by infant orangutans and a small number of adolescents. A quote from the research paper reads, "Swing arm, swing leg, swing object, hand on, dangle, reach palm, throw object, hit object/ground, fling, stomp, object move, and object in mouth were observed being used only by immature individuals." It is also very important to note gestures are achieved when the recipient is around or less than 1 meter away from the signaler. Around 84% of gestures have occurred when this was the case. For the mature orangutans, gestures such as stamping, beckoning, and touching are more common throughout this age group. Even though orangutans have been shown to do various other gestures, the research states that throughout all the footage that they recorded, there are 8 major goals or objectives that both male and females attempt to communicate. These goals are acquire object, climb on me, climb on you, climb over, move away, decrease intensity, resume play, and stop that. These are the 8 goals that an orangutan will mostly use throughout its life. It is not clear which exact gesture translates to one of these 8 goals, but orangutans usually shift from gesture to gesture until they receive the satisfactory goal they are searching for. Again, this is affected by the age groups of orangutans. Infant orangutans are the ones that have the hardest time interpreting these gestures. As for the adolescents and adults, usually have no trouble understanding another's intentions. The research states that more than 50% of the time, an adult orangutan will commit the action of a signaler before they are even finished signaling. This cannot be said for adolescents, since the statistics for these are inconsistent. A mixture of both vocal and gestural signs is some of the most uncommon ways of communicating that there is. As I stated in the last slide, adult orangutans, both male and female, usually attempt to communicate 8 different goals or objectives, and most, if not all, are either solely gestures or vocal signals. Although it is uncommon among adults, it isn't uncommon among the more immature orangutans, such as infants and adolescents. A mixture of these vocal and gestural signals can refer to raspberries, hair pulling, and the raising of their hand with a gentle scream. The reason most of these signals are committed by youthful individuals is because it entices a playful intention. These signals not only motivate playful behavior, but ultimately are playful behavior. When the more youthful orangutans play, it creates an environment where they can learn to communicate with each other. It is at an early age where orangutans learn to develop social skills as well as other bonds besides their own mother. It is important to note that the research paper specifically states communication between a mother and her child because female orangutans are single parents. Orangutan males do not participate in the raising of their young and are usually avoided by infant orangutans unless they are directly related. Most female orangutans stay with their young until they are 6 or 7 years of age. By this age, they would have all the necessary knowledge needed to survive by themselves and even start their own nest, unless they are male. The mixture of vocal and gestural signals is not limited to young orangutans, but are found more commonly amongst them for those reasons. When it comes to communicating, orangutans begin to develop their own cognitive skills since the moment they were born. Infant orangutans are playful and begin to learn how to communicate using their body movements, facial expressions, vocal communications, and gestural signals. Infant orangutans learn to develop these skills during their first years and perfect them by the ages of 6 or 7. The research paper states that the overall percentage of successful communication between all age groups and both sexes stand at a high 90%. This means that orangutans stay consistent with the way that they are able to communicate. Adults communicate most of the time with 1 out of the 8 objectives in their mind, and most of them are able to interpret this and begin the process of a responsive action before the signaler is even done. Most adolescents maintain a strong understanding and most of the time are able to comprehend things such as gestures and vocal signals just as well as some adults. Infant orangutans suffer to decipher these gestures and vocals in their first year or two, but after are able to develop very intelligent cognitive skills, responsive abilities, and a great memory for recognizable patterns. Orangutans have 8 major desires when communicating. They also have cognitive skills to decipher various gestures and vocals that may have the same meaning as well as various other meanings. The success rate for vocal and gestural communication stands at about an 80%. However, the overall success rate of communication between all age groups and both sexes stands at a tall 90%.